To kick things off, we take a look at the life of global digital citizens with the help of our next moderator, Mr. Sandun Hapugoda. Sandun Hapugoda joined MasterCard in 2017 to lead the company's digital value-added services business in Sri Lanka and Maldives, deepening the company's partnerships with banking and non-banking financial institutions, fintechs, and merchants. Our panel today include Mr. Tony Singarayar, who is the founding partner of Analogy Growth Partners, which is a strategy consultancy that pioneered the idea of awakening profitable growth through business model innovation. He's a skilled public speaker, the managing director of Ceylon Business Appliances Limited, and founder of Payable and the Commonwealth Digital Health Accelerator. Shubrendu Koche is a fintech strategist and builder helping last mile participants in their tier 2 and tier 3 cities make more money by becoming distribution hubs for digital services. He also runs the Ufin brand of merchant services in the Philippines. Dr. Shomdatta Singh is a first-gen entrepreneur, angel investor, best-selling author, and philanthropist. She is currently a student at Harvard Business School and the recipient of the very prestigious Champions of Change Award in 2023. Let's welcome our panel to the stage, where they will tell us how digital technology is set to transform the way we live.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So life of global citizens is a very, very broad topic. We have 30 minutes, and we have a really good diverse panel. So we are going to quickly deep dive into the conversation. So I'll probably start with Shub first. Shub, you have moved yourself from multinational large corporate to into a role where you are helping tier 2, tier 3 cities to adopt digital and to grow, right? I just wanted to know, especially given the Asia's population, I mean, of course, Asia has one of the largest populations, especially looking at the markets like India, China. How do you see the consumer's life are changing with the digital technology, especially in the areas of healthcare, education, and also in the governance aspects?
So, Sandun, thanks for saying I'm working with a small company. I can wear jeans, you can't. Okay. So, in the last 20 years, Singapore has been kind enough to tolerate me, but more and more work has taken me to the Philippines. And if you look at how Philippines is organized, roughly around 150 cities, roughly 1,500 municipalities, and then the unit of political system is a barangay. Each barangay around 2,000 to 5,000 people. And if you look at the trust, the highest trust rating is for the priest, whether it's the mosque or the church. Next is the school teacher in the primary school. And the third is the local merchant, the kirana, the warung, the SS store, the sari store. So somewhere in that digitization, I feel it's not going to be from 0 to 100. We'll not have digital banks and neo banks take up everything. So that's also coming up in the West. So if you look at JP Morgan Chase, they're opening hundreds of bank branches in the US. So digitization without the last mile playing an active role is not going to work. If you look at the news today, JP Morgan Chase, again, my favorite probably, they're starting a media business. So if you're a JPMC customer, you bank with them, they will be sharing your privacy enhanced data with a media advertising company, right? So they're the new Facebook. So there are lots of changes that are happening, but having worked with digital payments, trying to put a road toll on accepting payments, we tried to do that a little bit. But then the realization was, hey, if you can help them make some money, put some money in their pocket, they will start buying from you. So that's what we started doing in the Philippines. Anybody from the Philippines here? Anybody ever been to the Philippines? Anybody heard of Visayas, Cebu? Anybody heard of Mindanao, Davao? So my small little office is in Davao City. So we really go where no foreigners tread. But what we are doing is making the last mile participants bridge the digital services for commerce, for payments, for content to the other half, which has money, but they're still comfortable with cash. You can't force them to take a POS machine, start using cards, do QR codes. So that will come, but you have to prep them up. And the funny part is, from that continuum of India to Indonesia to Singapore to Philippines, you see the gender ratio change. So from 20% in India, it's almost 85, 90% in the Philippines. So of the 30%, 30,000 merchants that we have, 90% are women. So there's a force multiplier if you can digitize them the right way. Not by forcing them to take up digital payments, but showing them you can actually make more money. So our first goal is put some money in their pockets, then take your pound of flesh for the digitization. Right? Just to add, sometimes we think when we say digital, everything is digital. Anybody heard about e-sabong? Anybody know what e-sabong is? So that's the secret biggest use of wallets in the Philippines. It's essentially cockfights. And they are digitized, they are on your phone in classic 4D quality, 4K quality, right? The bets are placed using the wallets, but the payments for the winners are made using cash, right? So there's always this hybrid between digital and physical that you will see in Asia. So you have to work with that, you have to build on it, not go completely digital.
Thank you, Shubh. I want to get some insights from you as well, Tony, about the digital and physical storefronts. But before that, I want to wear your, since you have multiple disciplines, I want you to wear the Commonwealth of Center for Digital Health hat. Now, with the Commonwealth Center for Digital Health, I'm sure that you see this really nice emergence between healthcare and the technology with the new startups coming up. I just wanted to understand, especially focusing on these emerging markets and Asia Pacific, what do they really focus, these health tech startups, what do they really focus? What are the areas they want to really solve as gaps in the emerging markets?
Sure. Thank you. Is it right? Thank you, Sandun, for the question. So let me just give you a little background. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Commonwealth, but just to calibrate, the Commonwealth is Britain's former colonies, as you know. 56 member nations, 2.4 billion lives. And in 2018, we set up an institution called the Commonwealth Center for Digital Health. Every 2 years, we call for submissions from all of the member nations for startups working in digital health. And there are 16 different categories: maternal and infant health. The WHO has this stuff called the social determinants of health, so a bunch of things like that. And we get about 300 submissions from startups from many of the member nations. And through a fairly rigorous process of 5 months, a panel of international judges goes through these applicants' video presentations and so on, and selects 25 for Commonwealth Digital Health Awards. Now, the panel is quite special because there's people from the Gates Foundation and hospitals and CEOs of corporations and so on, and they're all volunteering time. To answer your question, Sandun, I think in what they focus on, the best of them, what they focus on is a blend of what can you do to help patients understand their condition better, and really clarify and simplify the why. They help professionals serve those patients well, and they help payers, whether it's a single payer like a government or an insurance company like in the US. They help those three hold hands better to serve the patient with the disease. So I'll just give you one quick example. If I'd like to think of losing weight, like I'm sure many of us do. And if I walk 15 minutes a day for 1 month, I'll lose 1 pound. Why? 15 minutes, I should be able to walk 2,000 steps. That's 1 mile, that's 100 calories. 100 calories times 30 days is roughly 3,500 calories. That's a pound. If I can simplify that for somebody, because now overweight is suddenly a disease, it's not a, it's a disease. If I can simplify it to that level, maybe there will be people who now can take digital technology and relate the number of steps they walk to something. Now, United Health Group, talking with the payer, which is $350 billion in the US, the largest health insurance company in the US, they would pay me $50 a month off my insurance premium, $600 a year, if I prove that I'm walking 2,000 extra steps a day. So patient, professional, payer, the combination of those three, and simplifying and clarifying what's the need state, that's what the best of the startups do.
Thank you, Tony. I mean, to ask you a very binary kind of a question, with this growth of health tech startups, and since our topic is about the life of digital citizens, right? Can we anticipate the personal healthcare growth of emerging markets and citizens with the emergence of these health tech startups?
Yeah, no, thanks. I think yes. My parents waited 7 years in Sri Lanka to get a landline. So when cell phones came, they leapt at the opportunity. I think what's happening here is digital technology has the ability to provide access to patients at an affordability level that is unheard of. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are concerned about Gen AI, but let me ask you this. If you take all the books that you've read in your whole life and put them on a bookshelf, how many feet would that bookshelf be? So what I understand is ChatGPT-3, as a super able assistant, was trained on a 189-mile-long bookshelf, which is 45 terabytes. So I don't actually care whether it's really good or it hallucinates. I don't care what it does. If I have an assistant that has absorbed and genuinely trained on a 189-mile-long bookshelf, which is from Colombo to Jaffna, by the way, that's brilliant. And I'm happy to use that bookshelf, if I can recruit its brain to help me do something in healthcare.
No, for sure.
So so I really think that people are leaping at the opportunity maybe a little bit too early, but this happened all the time, right? Whether it's steam engines or electricity or the internet, there's always people who say, oh, that's really bad. I think you just have to find what's good in it and make it useful.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Tony, for that. And I would like to move to Shom, slightly from the health tech to the e-commerce industry. So you're an e-commerce entrepreneur, and I'm sure you have the bird's eye view of what's happening in the industry and some of the new trends. So I have a two-part question for you. I just wanted to understand, especially focusing the emerging markets, and maybe you can focus your conversation around Asia Pacific. So the two-part question, first part is, what are the emerging trends that you see from the e-commerce startups and e-commerce, even the larger players? How do they kind of reshape their business to cater to the consumers? And also the second part of the question is, how do the consumers change in terms of adopting e-commerce in this part of the world, especially looking at, it's no secret that Asia will lead the e-commerce industry in terms of numbers for the next decade, especially looking at how it grows in India, China, and Southeast Asia markets. So I just wanted to understand the consumer perspective as well as the tech perspective of it.
Shandan, thank you so much for the question. Good afternoon, everyone. I think I'm lucky that I'm going after two really eminent panelists. One who talked about how he's helping access in the tier 1 and tier 2 cities, and you talked about e-commerce, you talked about digitization and health tech. We married both. So the fun that we do is that how many of you actually buy online, have bought online, right? Most of us. And in the last 2 decades, what has happened with the online e-commerce business is it's become the biggest data generation engine that is not only enabling fintech, health tech to decide how to reach their end consumers at the fastest possible route and the lowest possible cost. So before I delve deeper, because Shandun asked me 2 questions, how does the consumer behave now and how the technology has transformed itself to cater to the consumer need? I'm going to take a step back and tell you what we do. So I run the third largest distribution and supply chain company that helps FMCG brands sell in 20 countries across 11 marketplaces. Whether it's Lazada, Shopee, Tokopedia, Rakuten, Amazon, eBay, if you're buying a Red Bull, a Unilever product, a product from Dabur, Himalaya, any of these brands, if you go and see who the seller is, and most of the times you guys don't, that is Asidus. That's the company I founded in 2018. And why did I start this company? I used to own my own D2C brands. And so, unlike the old ages of pharma and healthcare companies where it's only a pharma company that would do Nutra and OTC products like a Cipla, Glenmark, Dr. Reddy, Novo Nordisk, and so on, things changed in the last 2 decades. And what did it change? When people like you, me, Shubh, Shandun, Tony sir, go online and buy a product, the manufacturers or the brands now figured out that the consumer now doesn't just buy the brand, they buy a need-based solution. They're looking for a problem. So you go online and you look for a testosterone booster, which you would typically not do when you go to a retail store because you have a specific need. Or let's say you're looking for, if you're post 40, you're perimenopausal, you're looking for solutions or nutraceutical products that helps you heal that. If you are a parent of a kid, now you know that there are certain neuroinhibitors that allow you to have better retention capacity for your kids. So you're going and looking for those online. So now the brand knows that it is reverse engineered. I'm no longer creating a product and then taking it to market and waiting for my consumers to buy it. I now create the product because the consumer has searched for it 1.75 million times. And that is how reverse engineering has changed the way brands actually communicate with end consumers. This has helped them not only reduce excess inventory, high decline in sitting on stock, or I'll give you a simple example. Imagine we tell Unilever International, which is the conglomerate that actually takes all the Unilever International brands global, that you have 37,000 SKUs, but I know only 5,000 will do well in Philippines. Because the socio-economic background doesn't support for the rest 37,000. So what am I doing? I'm becoming a partner to them. I'm disrupting distribution. So what technology did was took a 300-year-old industry that has existed for the longest time. You know, if P&G is 187 years old, distribution is 300 years old. Because everybody wants to reach the end consumer at the fastest possible route and the lowest possible cost. And then we came in and we said, hold on, we have a centralized order management warehouse management system. Now I'm reverse engineering demand. I am telling you which geography to enter with which product. So you are reaching not only in the end customer at the fastest possible route and the lowest possible cost, you're retaining them for a longer period of time.
Yep.
And with that, we're helping them determine pricing. What I sell in Philippines cannot be the same price I sell in Singapore or in US. A health supplement product sells for about an average of $19.99 to $27.99 in US. The same product in India sells for less than $300. Now what changes? The manufacturing. You can't make a US product and sell it in India. You have to think about your distribution and supply chain in the geography. So the concepts of making products in the country comes in. So see how the different parameters change. Purpose now drives manufacturing. Manufacturing setups are now built using machine learning and predictive data modeling, and supply chain is driven purely by analytics.
Yep.
So you're not stocking products without knowing where the demand is. That is the disruption that has happened in e-commerce. And that's why Amazon's biggest money comes from AWS and not the marketplace. So we sit in the middle where to disrupt that. So that's the 2 answers to your question.
Fantastic, Shom. Thank you very much for those insights, actually. It's really interesting. Before I come to Shobh, I want to go back to Tony with the connection of what Shom made. Like we spoke about e-commerce, but I've also circled back on the SME conversation as well. So if you when you look at the emerging markets, especially the Asian markets, these SMEs and MSMEs are the backbone. And if you look at the smaller retail shops, the smaller retail shops are like everywhere. They're catering to like all the consumer segments. However, they're typically selling all the FMCG products, right? So I just wanted to know that, is there any newer approaches that FMCGs are taking in terms of reaching out to customers? Because typically what happens is you still sell your product in a corner shop, but you still do ATL campaigns, you do social media campaigns.
do a little bit of a spray and pray in terms of marketing, right? Is there any change to this approach, Tony?
Yeah, no, thanks. Thank you, Sandun. And I really appreciate the example. I'm going to try to build on it. You know, I'll just start with a little story. About 10 years ago, I got a call. I live in the US, so I got a call there from my dad at 2 o'clock in the morning. And what he said was that my mom had passed away. So you can imagine the emotions, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I said, I'm getting on a plane right away. Then I put the phone down and I thought, I have a serious need. I have an urgent situation. But how on earth am I going to get on a plane now? So if there was an offer that came to me, not a discount offer, I mean any kind of an offer from an airline saying we can get you on a plane in half an hour, I would have paid it and left. But it took me about 14 hours to get on a plane, and then I missed my connection in Dubai, and that was a whole different story. But I couldn't, even though I had a serious and urgent need, I couldn't find an opportunity to buy a plane ticket in a hurry, 2 o'clock in the morning. When I go into a grocery store today, I have a shopping list in my mind, right? And some of those needs are more serious and urgent than others. Now, if a brand knew what was serious and urgent for me as I entered the small shop, right, they would be able to position a promotion to me that was newsworthy and not just noise that I want to shut out. So unfortunately, let me back up a little bit. FMCG globally by 2030 will be a $2.4 trillion market. To get there, every big brand, whether it's a billion-dollar brand or a small brand, has to grow between 3 and 7% CAGR. If you're running a billion-dollar, so just to give you a little context, I used to be in Johnson & Johnson for 20 years. When I left, it sounds grander than it was really not a very exciting job. I had responsibility globally for the consumer sector to what was called new category development and business model innovation. So that's where I'm coming from. You know, if you have a billion-dollar brand, you're trying to grow it 3%, it's very difficult because especially after COVID, all the big brands are growing like 2%.
Yep.
How am I going to grow 3% to 7%? You know how it works, right? You're a brand manager. You go into the president of the company and say, I got a great plan. I'm going to grow at 3% because you're thinking I grew at 2% last year. I'll be rewarded for growing at 3%. And you come out thinking, he just told or she just told me I need to grow at 8%. How did that happen? I have no idea, but now I'm committed to growing at 8% and I don't know how to do that. Promotions have become noise, not news. They're things to be avoided. And so how do you make a promotion more relevant is what's happening in the small stores. Because of that $2.4 trillion, India's 17 million kiranas sell 80% of FMCG products. 80%. It's the same percentage in Sri Lanka as well. So if you're a big brand manager and you don't know how to manage the distributors and the small stores, you don't have a chance of succeeding. Now, in the small store, going back to the example, I think if you have, everybody has a shopping list, right? If you go into the store with the shopping list and the brand has access to that shopping list, they are willing to even pay you to know what your shopping list is for today. Not for last week and not what is not serious and urgent. They are willing to compete for your business right then and there in real time.
Fantastic.
So it's the real-time promotion engine that I think your business would
As and when you walk into the small shop that you get in your...
Walk into the small shop, you know, let's say...
You know what you need.
You know what you need. If the brand knows and the shop knows what you need, you get an offer list coming up on your phone.
Yeah.
And so...
And the brand benefits, the shop benefits, and the consumer benefits.
You know, that's what ONDC did. You know, Tony sir, you know, when you spent 20 years in J&J and you know, like, that's the category innovation that you're talking about, right? Brand managers' biggest issues until a decade back was, how do I develop a new category when my dependency on the primary data, which is from the stores, which is highly diluted, how do I build brands based on that? Now when they do it, and this is where, I wouldn't just say social media, right? Social media is still a lot of noise, but today if you see why people go buy on TikTok or an Instagram shop or a Facebook shop, is because a brand has removed the multiple layers that existed between the wholesaler, the retailer, and the supplier,
Absolutely.
and saying, I want to talk to my end consumer directly.
Yep.
I want them to tell me what is that they need, and I'm going to develop brands based on that. The other thing that has disrupted is, before if you built a brand in the US, cross-border distribution and supply chain was a nightmare because the number of regulations and policies that exist, I'll give you an example. If you have a sexual wellness brand in US, doesn't mean you can sell the brand in GCC because it's a restricted category. Now, you as a brand didn't know that. You thought I could now sell the brand globally.
Yep.
But with today's disruption in the middleware distribution supply chain ecosystem, you now know that the regulations, you need an MOH, which is a Ministry of Health approval, that takes an insanely long time. So you wouldn't go to the market without a distributor taking the liability for the product, bringing it into the region means you now have an importer on record. So what is your role now? You're just the brand manufacturer.
Yep.
You led the distribution and supply chain engine in different countries that is acquainted with the local policies to manage it. Now you make it even more smarter. If you have one partner to do it, what are you doing? You're reducing your entire cost of operations and supply chain. So you now have more time to innovate and create brands than wasting time on supply chain planning.
Okay.
So when Sir said that, one of the things that what has happened in today's digital disruption is you and I are talking. If the phone is, you'll see the next ad that we're going to get is going to be some distribution supply chain company. Social listening is dictating consumer behavior and buying patterns. And even if we hate it, none of us have read the terms and conditions when we signed on to Amazon, eBay, Walmart, right? You know what it says? They can share your data liberally with their partners. So anybody with an API integration gets access to your data. So if you have the data, you not only are smartly innovating, you're actually creating brands before they're actually thinking in their mind, and you're catering to them, so you become the first mover.
Yeah.
That's how smart today, innovation has become because of machine learning.
Fantastic. No, that's really fantastic. I also want to talk about, now we spoke about, I want to talk about the corporates. We spoke about corporates reaching consumers, but I want to talk about governments reaching consumers now. This topic is about dynamics of living, working, governance, etc. Right? So while corporates reach to consumers with different approaches and intelligence that they have, now governments are also reaching to consumers now, and they're trying to establish infrastructure to make their lives better, right? And especially if you look at this part of the world, this digital public infrastructure has been a hot topic for last couple of years, and with the rising amount of middle class people, I know it's not a 0 to 1 moment as you correctly said earlier, but what are the initiatives that we see from the governments to improve people's lives, especially with the DPI aspects?
So I hate acronyms, so every time I use an acronym, he'll buy you a beer. So DPI, okay, beers on him. So if you look at what happened in India, right, you had the identity come up, and much of what I'm saying is what Mr. Nandan Nilekani has actually executed at scale. On top of identity, you came up with the payments, moving money. But then moving money also means fraud happens faster. So how do you put in the trust is going to be an important question for governments to solve. So while they've figured out ways of moving money between accounts, is it possible to refund and get my money back? Okay? Simple example, helper in Singapore got a WhatsApp call, gave her the DBS ATM PIN code, money is gone. By the time I go to the police station, they can't do anything about it, right? So the faster the money moves, the faster you get defrauded, right? So what you're seeing is examples of what has already happened in India being implemented, but there are some cultural challenges. There are ways in which, for example, in Philippines, I know nobody is here from the Philippines, but the national ID, there was a cultural mindset, hey, any ID needs to have a signature, right? My voter card has a signature. My driving license has a signature. Why is it that my national ID doesn't have a signature? So people didn't use it. And nobody was there to tell them, you don't need a physical signature on that card, right? So there is a lot of communication that needs to happen between the governments. But what you're seeing now, what we talked about ONDC, is really, unbundling the platform. So you saw over the last 10, 15 years, great power getting concentrated in the platforms. So you have the big names anyway, every day you read about them. But now if you break down the discovery of the products, what you want to buy, where you want to buy it, who you want to buy it from, how do you want to pay for it, how do you want to get it delivered, how do you want to get it insured, and all of that is being stitched together in real time. And people are bidding. And guess what? They're not taking your data. You are free to share your data. So the self-sovereign consent becomes the heart of that infrastructure. So if you can stitch that together, you can go from this DPI being an infrastructure to what they're already calling it as the intelligence. Because you've got this arms race for learning models, right? My model is bigger than yours. I can do a generic model that gives you better answer. But probably in Asia, what you need are smarter models based on use cases for healthcare, agriculture, and which support data which is not on the internet and which is also not in English. Otherwise, you'll end up with data which doesn't belong to you, is not relevant to you, because it's in English and on the internet. So I think that's what the government needs to do.
There's one thing fantastic, Shobh, you talked about, ONDC, the role of government to actually protect the end consumer. Now, everybody who's shopped on Amazon or Walmart know that they violate the biggest law, which is the consumer protection law, right? As a marketplace, you cannot build your own brands. So what they do, sir, is if they take 5 products of Johnson & Johnson doing very well, they'll replicate the same product and call it under Amazon Basics. And as you know, the algorithm is controlled by them. So when you search for something, that product comes up first and manipulates you to buy it. But the government, something like an ONDC, what it does is, there is no violation of the trust.
Correct.
And these Kirana stores now, imagine, so like Sir said, you can actually walk into the store and they will know what you need, because you're actually democratizing technology to cater to their needs faster.
Correct. Absolutely.
Without any manipulation.
Fantastic. So before we go into questions, we spoke about startups coming up and their trends. We spoke about health techs and how the consumers are getting benefited. And I met a couple of startups and founders in the forum earlier today. And we spoke about how corporates and governments are reaching out to consumers, and the DPIs are changing. And this is all being done by startups, right? So I have a question to Shom, and I think you're the best person to answer this. Considering the startup life, and since we have a lot of startup people here as well, how is the life of a startup? Do they have the work-life balance? And we are speaking about, maintaining your living, working, and playing balance for consumers, while you, as a startup, extend that benefit to the consumers. Do they have the whole balance for themselves? Just wanted to share.
With utmost honesty, given that I just got married 2 weeks back and I'm sitting on this panel and didn't go for a honeymoon, the truth is that there is no work-life balance. I think balance itself is a very, very overused, non-consensual term, because most of us feel balance is about spending 8 hours at work, 8 hours in sleep. That's not the truth. Balance is more internal. I love the hustle that I do every day. I'm addicted to it, but I also have the ability to decide where I want to fly, when I want to fly, without taking permission of the boss. There is no better balance than entrepreneurship, because when you're building something, it's your own, but you're also accountable for your actions, right? I always say empathy, accountability, and action. Empathy starts with yourself. When you start empathizing with yourself, you empathize with your business. That brings in accountability, that brings in action. But when you hustle, and there is no question of work-life balance, right? But if you see the fruitification of that, you build companies, you exit, or you invest in a company. Like recently, a lot of you who are from India would have seen Bolt Care, which Ranveer Singh has been promoting like crazy. I was one of the first checks in that company. And I had a 30x exit, right? So it's high risk, high reward. but it's passion versus prudence.
Yep.
But it's a high that is irreplaceable. I'm a third-time entrepreneur. And even though I tell Magnus, my husband, that, okay, you know, by 40 I'm done, I'm exiting, I know I'm going to do it again. Because it's insane. The high is insane. The passion is insane. And when you see something so beautiful coming out and they recognize you by that, versus, you know, you making somebody else richer, why would you choose anything else? So no question of balance there.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, when you're passionate of doing whatever you do, it's not a job anymore. Asanka is the best example that I know about it, right? So with that, I think we can open up for a couple of questions. We have few minutes left. So with that, we can open up for a couple of questions, if we have any. Yep, Salia.
Good to see you, Sandhu and Shub.
Hi.
I think it's been part of corporate life and then multiple startups. I totally echo with what Som said. It's a high. It's a high of building something on your own. But I need to caution some of the entrepreneurs that I've been part of many. We always see the entrepreneurial stories which are successful. And I've been teaching rural kids as well. When you go and inspire, and the governments and the ecosystems and the so-called high and mighty can talk about something at a high level, but the execution, when you go to a rural, right, when you see a kid somewhere in Ambilipitiya or Tisamaharama, you feel that they're not ready, right? So before we go and inspire people, right, if you don't have a support system to help these kids, especially I work with a lot of Gen Z, right? Gen Z, as earlier said, that they are smarter than us. I'm sure that many people who have kids would echo that way. Because they're smarter because they started with digital. I remember when I got the first computer, in the corporate life, when I was 23, I struggled. Even today I would struggle, Sandhu knows that, right? But they have started their life with this. We need to capture, this is where the education comes into play. This is where the support system comes into play. Most of the people think that starting ventures are about money. It's not about money. Money is the last thing that you should worry, right? I always say before I get into an investment, I said that stay with me for 1 year. Figure it out whether I can work with you, you can work with me, and go through the struggle. Because this entrepreneur is that not gonna sleep. You don't know when to get up. You don't know when to close the shop. But same way is liberating. It's liberating because it's your own thing. As Som said, you don't need approval from somebody else when you're an entrepreneur. But you are accountable. You are accountable for not only for your actions, you're accountable for other people's lives as well. Absolutely. I just want to close up that.
And because you said that, I want to also be very open about one thing, that I talked about the high. We often don't talk about the lows. I have battled depression. Entrepreneurship as a journey can be sometimes so hard because it looks very glamorous. You know, there's a very fine line between chasing valuation versus value creation. And it didn't happen overnight. So I have battled depression to an extent where I was like, I don't want to do it anymore. Because as an entrepreneur, if you're raising money, remember, you're in the wrong business. If you want to create value, you should be a client-funded company, not chasing valuation or money. It comes as a byproduct. Otherwise, be ready to hear so many no's that it can then baffle you. Why are they saying no's? And sometimes they're not saying no because the business model is not good enough. Sometimes they're saying no because you're a woman who's founded the business, and their worry is if you get married and have a kid, what happens? And I'm being very honest. The reason I started my family office and I started investing is because I wanted to change that notion. I wanted to not only take, but also give back, because I knew how hard it was initially to hear no's. It's after a long time of realization that I understood that no is a great word. It means it's a filter. It actually eliminates what's not necessary in your life. But it took me 35 years to realize that. So I'm so glad you talked about it, and that it may be all fancy, all glamorous, but trust me, if you're in it, be ready for the downs, because they can hit you very, very hard. And be open about mental health, because it's very important, especially for Gen Z, to understand the nuances of mental health and not take it very lightly, because it does impact your personal life.
Just to add a couple of topics to that. So playing sports in your student years, earlier years, actually helps. So I used to play squash. So sometimes I used to get beaten by good players, sometimes by people that I felt was a better player. So playing sports helps you prepare for running your own business. Second, I think it's also about being out in the field, being physically connecting to your customers, because that's what gives you the energy. Because if you're in your own office building something disconnected from them, you'll never get the feel for what you're building, what's the purpose for it. So I think you have to be out there, really observe, be present with your customer, and again, I think doing some sports helps.
Thank you very much. I really wish we had more time. With that, I think we have to conclude. It is a broad area, but I think we gave really good insight. So I would like to thank Tony, Dr. Shom, and also Shubhendru for their valuable time, great insights. And I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me as a moderator for this fantastic panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Few minutes, we have a few gifts for you guys. Just wait for 1 second. Let me see who's. Let me see. The girl in the pink dress. You. That's right. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but I would love for you to come and hand out these gifts. Good way to meet you also. We have a little gift for all of you.